hppodcraft.com.
You ask me to explain why I am afraid of a draught of cool air, why I shiver more than others upon entering a cold room, and seem nauseated and repelled when the chill of evening creeps through the heat of a mild autumn day. There are those who say I respond to cold as others do to a bad odor, and I am the last to deny the impression. What I will do is to relate the most horrible circumstance I ever encountered, and leave it to you to judge whether or not this forms a suitable explanation of my peculiarity.
I judge not guilty.
That was the opening of H.P. Lovecraft's Cool Air, read by Rachel Lackey.
Yes.
I hear that Lovecraft himself had an aversion to cold.
Right, he did. He did indeed. We know this from a letter he wrote to Robert E. Howard, which said, I'm going to not read you this whole thing, but Lovecraft goes on a lot about this. He says, I can't write decently under 73 degrees or 74. From there down to freezing, the effects of a falling temperature is simply increasing discomfort and sluggishness. But after that, it begins to be painful to breathe. I can't go out... And he just keeps going on about the different temperatures, how it affects his heart and his condition. And
wow.
I mean, if it was interesting, I would keep reading it. But it's just Lovecraft really didn't like the cold. Wow!
And thank God the Snuggie hadn't been invented at that point, because we might not have ever gotten the story. You know.
That's true. That's true. Oh, and for our English listeners, 73 degrees is 22.7 Celsius.
Also, for our English listeners, the Snuggie is a blanket with sleeves. I don't know if they, they advertise
I don't have the Snuggie over here. Maybe they have the Slanket? They might have the Slanket, which is just like the Snuggie.
The Slanket is the British equivalent of the Snuggie?
I don't know. It might be a different brand. I've seen the Slanket.
You've seen it there?
Which is a sleeved blanket. Not here.
Oh, I see. I got you. Yeah. So, but those are the two products on the market.
Those are the two products that are basically blankets with armhole sleeves in them.
By the way, I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
Oh, and I'm Chris Lackey.
And this is the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
And I like this story, but I've never been a fan of that title either. It seems a little weak to me.
Yeah.
Why isn't it cold air?
Well, because it's only 55 degrees, which really isn't that cold. In fact, right now outside here in Yorkshire, it's 46 degrees in May.
Okay.
So,
So you would call that cool air?
I'd say that cool air, yeah, sure.
But it's like a letter away from Kool-Aid. And that doesn't scare me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that Kool-Aid man kind of scares me a little bit.
He's a little scary. He just busts through walls. He doesn't care.
He's a little Lovecraftian. Yeah, he busts through walls. Do you drink out of him?
No, you don't. That's
that okay?
Totally inappropriate. He tips over and pours into your glass out of his head, and then you drink that. Yeah, it would be really screwed up if you actually drank out of him. That's not appropriate.
The Kool-Aid man does freak me out a little bit, as does most things that freak most people out, like darkness, silence, solitude.
It is a mistake to fancy that horror is associated inextricably with darkness, silence, and solitude. I found it in the glare of mid-afternoon, in the clangor of a metropolis, and in the teeming midst of a shabby and commonplace rooming house with a prosaic landlady and two stalwart men by my side. In the spring of 1923, I had secured some dreary and unprofitable magazine work in the city of New York, and being unable to pay any substantial rent, began drifting from one cheap boarding establishment to another in search of a room which might combine the qualities of decent cleanliness, endurable furnishings, and very reasonable price. It soon developed that I had only a choice between different evils, but after a time I came upon a house in West 14th Street, which disgusted me much less than the others I had sampled.
I mean, I can dig his situation. He's poor. He's trying to write for a living, so his options are limited, and he doesn't want to live in the dingiest place in the world. So
no. We've experienced this. You and I specifically. We lived in an old recording studio that didn't have a proper bathroom. Well, it had a toilet, but it didn't have a bathroom, so we had a basin in the bathroom that we took a shower in with one of those. You remember this, obviously. I'm talking more to the listeners.
Are you asking me if I remember it?
Do you remember this?
I do. It was squalid. It was
pretty squalid.
Right when I first moved out here to Los Angeles, that's the place. There were three of us living in there. There was carpeting on the walls, and there was a crazy homeless old woman who lived on our front porch, Christine.
Yeah.
And it was next door to a garage that only fixed Volkswagen Bugs, hence the name Bug Alley. Although I could have gotten that name for a number of other reasons. I don't think people were supposed to be living there because it was an industrial zone.
It was. You said this at my wedding. It was like kind of a Depression era Three Stooges kind of thing where we were like actually slept in the same bed.
Yeah, all three of us in the same room.
Yeah.
And then the one source of water thing was the worst part, you know.
Yeah,
because you do your dishes in sink, and then you have to fill up the camping bag to shower from the same sink.
Exactly.
And, it was deplorable.
It was pretty terrible. But this guy, this sounds like the freaking Taj Mahal compared to where we lived.
Right. Well, he decides. So the protagonist here picks a place. Actually, it's funny. He comes to regard his place as at least a bearable place to hibernate till one might really live again. Which, actually, I thought was really good writing. You know.
Yeah. No, it is good.
Certainly, when we were living in Bug Alley, I kind of felt that way. You know.
Yeah.
But sometimes it seems like no matter where you are, anybody could be living in a constant state of that attitude, which is, things aren't exactly how I want them now, so I'm just sort of hibernating until everything's exactly how I want it to be.
Right, and check it out. That's never going to happen, buddy. So
it's never going to happen, and sometimes you wind up wasting so much time because you're waiting for, I don't know. Once I get this, then I'll start living. Once I get this car, or this apartment, or this job.
True. Well, this place, this actual, the address that the West 14th Street place, is an actual location. 317 West 14th Street, where his friend George Kirk lived briefly in 1925. And this actual place is now like a bed and breakfast hotel in Chelsea. You can go. It's called Chelsea Pines, and I'll put the link to it in our show notes. Anybody's in New York and they want to stay at the Cool Air place, you can, and they even have it on the website too. That this was the inspired setting of H.P. Lovecraft's Cool Air. So, but it looks nice actually. It looks very nice.
Well, anyway, after living in this rented room at this place for about 3 weeks, our bookish writing protagonist hears a spattering on the floor, and he sees that there's a leak coming from a ceiling.
Right.
And there's this pungent smell of ammonia. He asks the landlady about it, who's the Spanish woman named Herrera. Herrero, Mrs. Herrero, who comes in and she delivers all the exposition for him, and it's written it's written phonetically as well. So
it's pretty tough
in a really funny way. I couldn't help thinking it was Speedy Gonzales that was delivering the news to him, or more like Slowpoke Rodriguez,
Oh right, his cousin. Slowpoke was that. It's a lot more like Slowpoke is how I heard it in my head. Too.
Yeah. But all his own housework he do, his little room.
It's very much like Picture in the House, where Lovecraft does the phonetic writing.
The Solomon ammoniac that man used for keep him cool. Oh, Speedy, I'm so hungry. So Slowpoke Rodriguez tells him that upstairs is Dr. Munoz. He lives right above him.
Yes, Dr. Munoz.
He's a doctor. He's getting sicker all the time. And as a result of whatever illness he has, he can't have any warmth, and he takes these funny-smelling baths. And she says, he was a great doctor once, but he's fallen in the world quite a bit.
See,
I think she said her father in Barcelona had heard of him. He was a famous doctor of some kind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The protagonist then goes on to describe their meeting, which actually is quite dramatic, but is expressed rather dryly. He says,
I might never have known Dr. Munoz had it not been for the heart attack that suddenly seized me one forenoon as I sat writing in my room. Physicians had told me of the danger of those spells, and I knew there was no time to be lost.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
A heart attack is a spell?
Yeah. Like, the physicians have warned me that apparently these heart attacks are no good. Who knew? When I hear the word attack, I'm usually prepared for fun. I had no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he has his heart attack spell, and he drags himself up to the doctor's apartment and knocks on the door. That kind of says through the door, "Excuse me, I believe I'm having a heart attack. Could you help me, perhaps?" The doctor lets him in, and he's surprised to find out that the doctor's got a really kickin' pad.
Yeah.
This place looks great. You wouldn't expect it in this squalid environment, but he really has done it up nice on the inside. Mm-hmm. And of course, he sees the doctor as well.
Right.
The figure before me was short but exquisitely proportioned, and clad in somewhat formal dress of perfect cut and fit. A high-bred face of masterful, though not arrogant expression was adorned by a short iron grey full beard and an old-fashioned pince-nez shielding the full dark eyes. Nevertheless, as I saw Dr. Munoz in that blast of cool air, I felt a repugnance which nothing in his aspect could justify. Only his lividly inclined complexion and coldness of touch could have afforded a physical basis for this feeling, and even these things should have been excusable, considering the man's known invalidism. It might too have been the singular cold that alienated me, for such chilliness was abnormal on so hot a day, and the abnormal always excites aversion, distrust, and fear.
Yeah.
It does. He's got those, pince-nez, the glasses that clasp onto the bridge of the nose.
Oh, right. That's what those are.
Yeah, like Teddy Roosevelt used to wear a pair
Oh,
of
of
those.
course. Okay, yeah.
Anyway, the doctor starts fixing him up
Yes.
immediately. He gives him some drugs. I don't know exactly what you can do for a heart attack
Yeah, I don't know.
in your apartment, but he does something for it. It's a funny line where he says he sought to distract our narrator from his seizure by telling him of his theories and experiments. But he sought to distract him from his seizure. That's like the mad scientist answer to everything, you know?
Right.
My God, you're bleeding. Perhaps I should tell you of my theories and my experiments.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're lost. You need directions? Here, let me tell you some of my theories and about my experiments.
Yeah, exactly. But so while our guy's having a seizure, he tells him, well, I think that if a person is properly maintained, that they can stay alive no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, if their organs fail, even if they don't have a heart, he says, as long as most of the tissue's properly maintained, and if they have that sheer force of will, they can stay alive. That's my theory, and that's been what my experiments are based on.
Right, exactly. And he says, keeping the habitation cool around 55 or 56 degrees, which is 12.8 degrees Celsius for our English or European listeners, that will preserve the flesh. It'll maintain it.
Yeah, well, and he has to do that himself. He himself is sick. He's got some illness that means he has to stay cold.
Yes.
So that's why he has to keep it in his apartment 55, 56 degrees.
And he uses a gasoline engine that uses an ammonia cooling system.
Our narrator sometimes can hear the pumps from that cooling system in his own room downstairs.
And you know, this cooling system was something that Lovecraft actually had a little bit of familiarity with. In one of his letters to his aunt, he talks about how there was a movie theater that used this ammonia cooling system.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she kept saying that the theater was hot, and he said, well, it has that new ammonia cooling system. There must be cheapskates because they're not using it, because, it's brand new, and it should be working just fine. And that was just kind of a strange thing. And that letter predated the story, so it might have been something that he was thinking about.
So the doctor fixes our guy up, and so our guy is totally devoted to him now. No matter how he feels about that slight repugnance. He feels like he owes him. And, he says he paid him frequent overcoated calls, which is such a great phrase. So he keeps getting treatment from the doctor and going regularly to get seen.
Right, yeah.
And in these meetings, the doctor...
Over a period of days, he gets these.
Right. And the doctor keeps telling him about his theories and experiments. And he sees that the doctor also is mixing in these ancient medieval magic things into what he does.
Right.
He's got all these books on the shelves that contain ancient. What does he say?
Incantations of the medievalists and cryptic formula of rare psychological stimuli. Is I think.
Yeah, right.
Psychological stimuli.
He's sort of like Doctor Strange.
Well, yeah, he's a medical doctor and he practices the black arts. So yeah,
exactly.
Similar to Doctor Strange in that way. But that's a common thing that's in Lovecraft's writing is mixing science with mysticism.
Yeah, the doctor thinks that using some of these ancient incantations, they actually do have physical properties of some kind, or saying them it actually has an effect on people. And he had a partner in his previous life, Dr. Torres of Valencia. Not Valencia, California, I imagine.
No, I think the original Valencia.
It would be great if it was Valencia of California. That's where Magic Mountain is. And,
their offices were right under Batman the Ride.
Well, that's so lame.
It's so lame.
Awesome.
That is not going in.
Well, he had a partner, Dr. Torres, and Dr. Torres helped him with this illness that he contracted 18 years before, but Dr. Torres himself died as a result of their experimenting and whatever illness this is. He mentions him as, the person who had shared his early experiments and had been able to sort of minister on him some treatments before he himself went.
Exactly.
But it's, things are getting bad for Munoz.
Yeah, well, I mean, they also talk about some more details about this whole temperature business and how if he keeps it colder, it'll preserve him more. And he starts using these Egyptian spices and things too.
He's burning incense in his apartment. He's got these sort of Egyptian death rituals going on, or I don't know what he's doing in there. And he's dropping the temperature colder and colder.
Basically, he's sort of in panic mode, and so he's using more coldness and he's using more magic stuff to try and stop whatever his illness is from happening.
He's not eating anymore, and he's spending a lot of his time also writing these documents to other physicians.
He acquired a habit of writing long documents of some sort, which he carefully sealed and filled with injunctions that I transmit them after his death to certain persons whom he named, for the most part lettered East Indians, but including a once celebrated French physician now generally thought dead, and about whom the most inconceivable things had been whispered. As it happened, I burned all these papers undelivered and unopened. His aspect and voice became utterly frightful, and his presence almost unbearable. One September day, an unexpected glimpse of him induced an epileptic fit in a man who had come to repair his electric desk lamp, a fit for which he prescribed effectively, whilst keeping himself well out of sight. That man, oddly enough, had been through the terrors of the Great War without having incurred any frights or flurry. Then, in the middle of October, the horror of horrors came with stupefying suddenness.
So that guy, he just had a glimpse of the doctor, and that gave him an epileptic fit.
Yeah, that's pretty strange. Going back just a little bit further in that is the part where he says one of them was a once celebrated French physician, now generally thought dead. Is that, I think it was in Kenneth Haight's book, he says that that's a reference to something that Lovecraft is eventually going to write about.
Oh,
but
really?
He doesn't say what it is, so I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about there.
Listeners probably do know, so hopefully they could, somebody can write in and tell us what they think it is, who they think it is. So the horror of horrors that comes is one night the refrigerating device the doctor uses breaks down. And this happens like at 11 at night or something like that. So nothing's open. They need a new piston to get the thing running again, but they can't get that until the morning.
So he's got problems. Basically calls down to the narrator, and the narrator comes up to try and help him.
They start making calls, making inquiries, and basically what he has to do is get ice for the old man. And the old man gets into the bathtub and demands ice, and they keep bringing it up for him. I don't think they pour it in the tub for him. They leave it outside the door, and then he comes to get it.
And he's all covered up in bandages and things.
Yeah, right. In fact, the doctor, while he's raging in anger about the fact that his machinery is falling apart, he throws his hands over his eyes and runs into the bathroom. And when he comes back out, he's got a bandage over his face. Yeah. And then, the narrator never sees his eyes again, which is a really crazy scene. Yeah. I think his eyeballs popped out, and he's just holding them in with some bandage.
Oh.
And and just to think of, I mean, it really is. The whole thing is a crazy scene. This blindfolded old man is laying in a bathtub covered in ice, screaming at his neighbor, "More ice, more ice!"
It's very odd. Yes, I'll give you that.
Well, so the narrator is busy about getting that ice for him and bringing it back.
Yeah, and then he kind of hands the job off to somebody else because he gets on the horn trying to figure out
exactly
who can come fix this machine or the part that he needs. He's just dealing with that while somebody else is getting the ice.
The somebody else though is a seedy-looking loafer that he just finds outside. He says, "Young man, you look seedy. Let me give you a very important job." I mean, apparently, that was just the only kid that was available who would take money to run and deliver ice.
Right.
Although finally he runs around all that next day trying to find the piston. I think it takes him till like 1 p.m. or something like that to get it. Yeah. And he finally returns to the apartment building with the part and 2 sturdy and intelligent-looking mechanics. But by the time he gets back, everything's crazy at the boarding house.
Yep.
The lounger he'd hired, the seedy-looking loafer, had gotten curious and looked in the bathroom at whoever this, he'd seen the blindfolded crazy old man. And it freaked him out, so he just ran away. And there's a terrible odor coming from the doctor's apartment and this dripping sound within. They open the place up, finally. Mm-hmm. The landlady gets some kind of key, or she's got a skeleton key, or she picks a lock, I don't remember. But they get the door open, and there's a trail of fluid from the bathroom to the hall door. Mm-hmm. And there's a pool of ick around a desk where something's been written. And then the trail ends on the couch. He doesn't want to describe what's on the couch, but he does go and grab this note, and he's sort of able to puzzle some things out. It says,
The nauseous words seemed well nigh incredible in that yellow sunlight, with the clatter of cars and motor trucks ascending clamorously from crowded 14th Street. Yet I confess that I believed them then. Whether I believe them now, I honestly do not know. There are things about which it is better not to speculate, and all I can say is that I hate the smell of ammonia and grow faint in a draught of unusually cool air. The end, ran that noisome scrawl, is here. No more ice. The man looked and ran away. Warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last. I fancy you know what I said about the will and the nerves and the preserved body after the organs ceased to work. It was good theory, but couldn't keep up indefinitely. There was a gradual deterioration I had not foreseen. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in a strange, dark place when he minded my letter and nursed me back. And the organs never would work again. It had to be done my way. Artificial preservation. For you see, I died that time 18 years ago.
there you go. The final last line in italics. He's been dead for 18 years.
Oh, no. So
Yes.
all of his experiments were just keeping his dead body animated.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that's the end of the story.
It's very simple and short. I forgot how short it was when I
Right.
reread it, but I'm pretty familiar with it. We're friends with Brian Moore, who directed in, I think it was 1999 or probably earlier than that. He did a version of Cool Air that you can get on DVD. And
Yeah, that's part of that the Lovecraft collection or something. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the first volume of the Lovecraft collection, and it's really well done. He did a really great job with it. And there's been a ton, like I said a few weeks ago, the Night Gallery episode had an adaptation of Cool Air, which had, not unlike Us Today, had the narrator character was a female. She was a woman.
Oh, okay. The character itself was a woman in that episode.
Yeah.
But there have been a lot of adaptations of the story.
Oh yeah, many. I think because it takes place in a very it's easy to shoot. The locations, there's not a lot of crazy special effects. It's
Right.
just, some people in a room in a house talking and, a gross, creepy, dead body, and that could be whatever you want it to be at the end of the whole thing.
This has a lot of similarities to some of Lovecraft's other work. You've got specifically Reanimator,
Yeah.
where you've got the physician who's obsessed with, preserving life. Although this is a little different, sort of asserts that it's the force of will itself that is keeping him alive. And it's less medical and more maybe
Metaphysical?
metaphysical. Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
But, whereas Reanimator sort of anticipated adrenaline and that sort of thing, this, to an extent, anticipates cryonics and cryogenic freezing a little bit, which didn't become something that people were really sort of obsessed with for many years. I remember I saw this 80s television movie called Chiller. It's a Wes Craven movie, which I didn't realize until I looked it up again, but Wes Craven directed it. I just happened to watch it with my mom on TV. It scared the heck out of me, but it had the stupidest plot. It was like this wealthy young man gets cryogenically frozen for 10 years, and when they unfreeze him and they bring him back, he doesn't have a soul.
No.
So he's murdering a lot of people and he's cruel to animals, and he's just generally a bad guy. It scared the crap out of me, though.
It sounds totally unscary, I have to say.
It does, and it probably is, but I liked it then.
Some interesting facts. There's many about this particular story. One is that it was written in March 1926, but it wasn't published until March 1928, so about 2 years after he wrote it.
Okay.
And of course he tried to get it published in Weird Tales, but Weird Tales wasn't having it. Again, the publisher, Farnsworth, thought the ending might be a little too graphic, and so turned him down.
That is so strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it must really be because of the backlash against The Loved Dead.
Yeah, The Loved
because
Dead.
they're really, what's so gruesome about it? I mean,
Nothing. He doesn't even describe
it's
the
all
body.
in suggestion. No,
Yeah.
he doesn't describe anything. He just says,
There's something on the couch.
yeah, and that he doesn't even want to say what it is.
Yeah, I think, and maybe Farnsworth was just a little mad at Lovecraft, or maybe, I don't know, exactly why, that would have happened, but, You know, he didn't. But it eventually got published in this really crappy magazine called Tales of Magic and Mystery. That's where it was first published.
That was a crappy magazine? How do you know that?
It should, just from what people say about it. And he didn't get paid very much, and it was, it just kind of had lower quality writing in it.
Right.
And some other interesting facts is Lovecraft's friend Frank Long, who went to New York University. He had a heart condition and a heart attack specifically.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He didn't die from the heart attack, but it was something Lovecraft was friends with him when it happened, so that might have had a connection to there.
I find it, this just occurred to me, and it's kind of jumping back a little bit, but earlier he had said, when Dr. Munoz when his health was really fading fast, he was writing all of these letters to the French physician, etc.
Right.
To all these different people that he sealed up, and he asked the narrator to mail for him once he died. And the narrator says right then and there, of course, I destroyed all of these letters.
Yeah.
And he didn't send them. Did he read them first at least? I mean, what if it was like willing money to people who needed it, or just saying, after all these years, I can finally say it, you're my best friend, or something like that. And he just completely just burned it and threw it away because he assumed it was, about science. People should, or maybe there's a physician who wouldn't be as interested in preserving life after death, but maybe he's working on some kind of cure for cancer or something, and this little bit of information would really help.
Yeah, I think it was a really rash reaction to what he saw.
Yeah, what a bad thing to do.
Yeah, and nobody really got hurt. The guy that ended up dying was, he's been dead for 18 years, so he got 18 bonus years. So what's so bad about it?
I don't know.
Come on, that's what I say.
Anyway, that just occurred to me.
Oh, and supposedly Munoz may have been modeled after Lovecraft had a neighbor in Brooklyn who was Dr. Love, who was a Spanish, of Spanish descent doctor, and his name was Dr. Love.
His name was really Dr. Love?
Yeah, William Larthrop Love. And
wow.
He was actually a state senator for a time and sort of a local celebrity. And he lived really close to Lovecraft in Brooklyn. So, are you familiar with Edgar Allan Poe's Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar?
I'm familiar with it in that it is a story in my complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, but I've actually not ever read it.
Yeah, I haven't read it either. But supposedly,
I know that this story is supposed to be somewhat based off of it.
We're doing a great job here as literary critics, discussionists, whatever you want to call us. Yeah, I've never read it either, but supposedly it's very similar to this story. And
hey, this isn't the Edgar Allan Poe podcast.
It's right. Thank you. That's what I was saying all these last few seconds in my head to myself. But Lovecraft was talking about this story specifically in his supernatural horror and literature, which he wrote at this time.
Oh, okay.
And he has defended himself later and said, actually, I didn't. That had nothing to do with this. This was more inspired by Arthur Machen's The Novel of the White Powder. So that's kind of where Lovecraft got the sort of kernel of an
idea for the story.
Yeah. There you go. So that's it for my fun fact.
When I said that the adaptation was called Chill, I almost said, and not even to be funny, The Chill Factor, which is that Cuba Gooding Jr. Skeet Ulrich movie. I think it's like Speed in an ice cream truck, basically, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Or was it on a train? I think it was on a. Was it on a train? They couldn't stop the train? I don't remember.
I thought it was an ice cream truck, but what do I know?
I don't know anything.
Again, that's much like Edgar Allan Poe. I didn't see that.
Yeah. You're not. This isn't the Cuba Gooding Jr. podcast.
It should be.
It should be. And folks, this is the time that we announce our next podcast, the
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Literary Podcast.
Literary Podcast. Is it Literary Podcast? Celluloid Podcast. Next week, Snow Dogs.
That's well, okay. So
actually, what do we have next week?
Next week is hold on to your socks, buddy, because it's happening.
What?
The Call of Cthulhu.
Oh my God! Finally, we've arrived.
We have arrived. The good stuff is happening. Bam.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're there now. I mean, there's nothing but real good. I mean, of course, there's still going to be some laughable things coming up, but for the most part, it's good stuff coming up.
Yeah, we're getting the goods, man. We're getting the goods, and with that one, I'm sure that's not going to be a single part episode.
Yeah, we haven't really planned it that much yet, but I'm sure it'll be multi-part. And the story itself of Call of Cthulhu is broken into multiple parts, so it shouldn't be a problem.
3 parts, actually. So maybe we'll do a 3-part episode. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows? I don't know
see.
what we're going to do.
We'll figure
2
it out.
parts, 3 parts. We'll figure it out as we go. And we'll probably have some guests and some fun stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So we'll see what happens next week.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And this has been the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.